Hey, I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Very special guest. It's former Major League Baseball pitcher and musician, Barry Zito.
How are you?
What's up, man? How's everything going?
Everything's great. Having fun, man.
Awesome. Yeah, well, it's good to have you in New York, and it's cool to see this story because you just lay it all out there. And I wonder what it was like kind of going back through that time in your life, because things are a lot different for you now. So what was it like kind of creaking that door open and revisiting some old demons?
Yeah, that's right, old demons for sure. I think there's something to be gained for, from looking back on something out of the emotion, because when we're just in it, the emotion can be so overwhelming, we're actually not seeing clearly. And so for me to look back even at my childhood and my father's kind of motivations raising me, and in my interpretation pushing fame and success on me, realizing that he had great intentions, but there was a lot of fallout that I experienced later in my career because I just became so hungry for fame and money and validation. Really, that's what I was lacking.
It's amazing when you're filled with yourself too, and you're just trying to deal with that, because your parents are trying to do the best job they can, but like your dad put a ton of pressure on you. And so when did you realize like that probably wasn't the healthiest thing for me?
Yeah, I experienced the negative implications of that pressure for many years, but I think finally when I found an identity beyond my baseball performance is when I truly realized that that was not good at all for me. And my father was a hugely successful musician with Nat King Cole, and and then became a talent manager, and he probably, he just wanted the best for his son. But the way I interpreted it was, I have to perform for love, really.
Yeah.
It's pretty heavy.
And that's a lot of pressure. It's one thing to perform for fans and for your teammates, but performing for your dad, like that's not an easy deal at all.
Yeah, that's right. And so I ended up transferring that need for his approval onto all the fans, and became so obsessed with what everybody thought about me, and was just trying to get wins so that people would like me and think I was good. And somewhere along the way, I lost that passion for the game.
So when did that passion begin for the game? Because you had a great career. I mean, even starting young, like you were doing your thing. When does it first hit that you realize baseball is going to be a big thing in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I played since I was 6, and I think by the time I got to college, I picked up a lot of velocity, and I was throwing 93, 94 miles per hour in college. And at that point, I said, okay, this is a real situation. I could really do this. And
you had the nasty curveball also. I mean, that was a huge part of the deal as well, right?
Yeah, I'd been throwing the curve since I was 7, and so, contrary to popular knowledge now.
Yeah, 7 years old is pretty early for a curve, right?
It is, yeah. And for me, that it was a natural pitch, and so I always had that. But once I had the velocity to go with that in college, then that's when I felt like, okay, this major league thing could actually really happen now.
And it's one thing to make it to the bigs. It's another thing to have the success that you had. So how do you kind of take things to the next level? Once you get to Oakland, you guys had a great squad, but how do you turn things into being a Cy Young winner?
Yeah, I think in anything when you're just starting out, and I was just starting out in the major leagues, certainly not at baseball, but I didn't really know what I was up against. I was just out there doing my thing. I knew I was facing hitters I'd looked up to and collected their baseball cards for years, but I didn't quite understand how hard it was to be in the big leagues. Won a Cy Young my second full season, and then at that point I went, oh wait, how do I repeat this?
Right.
And that's kind of when everything started to get really heavy for me.
So what were some of those welcome to the bigs moments where you're like, all right, this is going to be a little trickier than I thought?
Yeah, I mean, it was facing guys that, like Nomar Garciaparra and Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
Some of these guys I had an easy time getting out. Those guys, I mean, they could hit it, get the barrel on the ball anywhere it was pitched.
And they're spraying it all over the yard, and you're like, okay, these are some big-time hitters.
Oh, yeah. Manny Ramirez like, hitting, down and away fastballs for Oppo homers. I'm like, you're not supposed to do that.
You're like, I set up outside, I hit my spot, and you're still taking it out.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you had A-Rod in there, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds. Like, you had some of the best hitters ever that you had to go up against at that point.
Yeah. Oh, no, that was, yeah. And that was the era of baseball that was, these offenses were prolific.
Definitely. So you're doing your thing in Oakland, and then when you get to San Francisco, based on the contract, based on the situation, like you're just thrown right into the thick of things. So what was the biggest transition as you're going from Oakland to San Fran at first? Yeah,
the transition for me, being with the Oakland A's, and they still have this kind of this air about them, is they just kind of do what they do. They're misfits. They're really good almost every year. It's incredible, but they just have this personality. Well, when I went to San Francisco, had this big contract. The general manager, Brian Sabian, said you might as well tattoo that number on your forehead because that's all you're going to be, for, ever again. I put so much pressure on myself to be different, to kind of be more professional and, maybe be more appealing to a mass, fan base. And really, I lost myself for many years trying to just out of a good intention, you know, have people think I was worth the money. And I was kind of living from the outside in instead of just doing what I did to get there.
I know you've talked about going from a boy to a man in San Fran, but when you're in Oakland and you're a boy, like, are you happy playing baseball, or was it not until later that you really found that peace and happiness with everything?
Yeah, I think I was really happy at the beginning and the end of my career. You know, and at the beginning is the mastery. They say the three levels of mastery is the first one is the unconscious competence. You're good, you don't know why. And then the middle ground, which was hard for me, is the conscious incompetence. This is really hard and I'm not great at it. And the third level is the conscious competence. You kind of get back to figuring out how to enjoy it. And, you know, for me, that was kind of the arc.
Yeah, and in that middle part of your journey, like, there's a lot that you went through there. So when you think about some of the challenges there, what were some of the lowest moments for you? I know you've told a story about driving around the park and crying and not being on the team, but, like, what are just a few other things that you're just like, this was a really rough time in my life here?
Yeah, my second season with the Giants was really tough. I mean, I wanted to justify that and validate that first hard season in 07, you know, where I had a losing record. And so I was 0-8, my first 8 decisions in 2008. I mean, 0-8 with like a 7.5 ERA. So,
yeah.
And making like more money than every guy on the team. That was just surreal for me. I actually got taken out of the rotation because I just couldn't pitch, you know, and got inserted in later. But that's when I really realized I'm up against something that is literally too great for my own strength. And it took me a few more years to actually make a change, but that was kind of the first of it.
When did you get to a point where failure was okay and that it was just a part of life? Like, how long did that take you?
That took many years of being stubborn and bullheaded. But, you know, in 2010, I was left off the roster after my 4th season. Team won the World Series. I was in just a pool of my own shame, you know, actually at times rooting, you know, for them to lose so I could go home and get out of this terrible ego, you know, threatening situation I was in. And right after that, I went home to LA and entered a 12-step program for codependency, which is obsession with others' opinions. And that's where my life started to change, you know, and for the first time I looked to a higher power to define me, to God really, instead of to everybody else around me to define me. And I think that came from growing up where a father, in my opinion, was defining me. And so after that, 2012 comes and this playoffs and World Series, and I said, all I can do is my best. I can't guarantee a win here as much as I want to for all of you.
You can't control it.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was the healthy perspective I needed.
It's interesting because you're obsessed with other people's thoughts. Like, this wasn't a huge social media boom at this point. Like, can you imagine what your life would have looked like in 2019 with social media if you're going through all your stuff in 2010? Like, it would have been insane.
Oh, yeah, there's no way. I mean, you know, when Twitter was just starting out in, I think it was the summer of 08, I had Twitter for a couple months in the winter and spring of 09. You know, 09, January, February 09. And I think 2 months later, I was like,
I'm out.
Because I hit the comments thing.
I can't do it.
You know, crying again.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about your faith, because that really brought a peace to you and that just kind of got you back on a good path. So how did faith change things for you, and how did you find that peace ultimately?
Yeah, you know, interesting. The faith part, I was raised in a spiritual New Age tradition that was kind of based in the Eastern philosophies, which is, how am I going to get to God? You know, if I work hard enough and have strong enough willpower, I'm going to do this. And the faith that I found, a Christian faith, is actually I can't do it. So why are you trying so hard? This is something you're never going to achieve. And God comes to us and wants us. And that's a completely different thing.
Totally.
So, yeah, for me was grace, you know. Oh, wait, I can't earn it? You're telling me I can't do this? That was like blasphemy in my house. So don't think negative. No, don't put that out there. You're going to get that. And now it's like, oh, actually, I'm not strong enough to do any of this life on my own. I need help. And it took me a lot to get to that point. But when I could, inrush this peace and this contentment I never had.
Well, especially in the sports world, where you're trying to achieve one thing after the other, to realize, like, it's already been done for me. There's nothing I can do to move myself any higher or lower. Like, that must have been a life changer for you. And then once you get back on the baseball field, it's a whole new Barry.
It's a whole new thing, yeah. That's right. And the idea that we don't have to earn this is very foreign, because in the world
we're trying to get everything.
Yeah, we got to work hard and discipline and put your head down and you'll get there, son. You know. And with this, it's like, no, you can't earn it, and that's hard to comprehend. But for me, it put baseball back where it should have been, which is, this is a game. Have fun.
It's not the most important thing or the thing that's going to define me in my life.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I actually got a tattoo of a golden calf after I became a Christian, because baseball was my God that I would bow down and worship.
Yeah, and you sunk all your time into that. And you also need to just put time in yourself too, because you're spending all this time as a pitcher, and we're not really focusing on ourselves and our lives outside of our careers.
Yes.
And we can miss a lot of different things in our lives.
That's a great point, the balance.
Yeah.
Having balance equally, you know, is so important and so hard to do when you're in a professional sport.
Totally. So you mentioned the end of your career and how great that was. That run you had in, what was it, 2012?
Yeah.
I mean, that was incredible. So were you present in that moment? Did you get to enjoy it? And what was it like for you?
2012 was a redemption year for me where, you know, I got to help the team win a World Series. And it was just incredible because I was going into these games, and, you know, my wife can attest to this, but I was like, if I'm going to give up 10 runs, then that's it. I just want to do my best. And that was such a foreign thing to literally be willing to give up the thing that I wanted most. And I think that's where the power comes from, is when we're willing to let go of this thing we're working our whole life for and just say, this is all I can control, and I hope it goes well. It sounds detached, but really that's where the power is.
No, it's freeing. Yeah,
It's
we don't need to clench so tightly, and we can let that go. And it's really an incredible thing when you're able to live like that, and it also able to play your sport in a way where you're not putting the pressure on yourself anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big difference.
That's right.
So let's talk about some music now. I mean, music's always been in your life, but when did you realize, like, hey, I want to kind of do this as my next chapter?
Yeah, music was my first love.
Right.
Ironically, my parents were musical, and I played guitar since I was 21, you know, signing with the A's out of college. So I always knew I would go into music full time. I always thought it'd be in LA. But, you know, on this windy road that kind of I got brought on, we ended up in Nashville and never went back to California. So retired there and, you know, ended up writing songs on Music Row and co-writing with these amazing writers, released a little EP. Yeah, and now working on the music production side, which has kind of been my real dream for a long time.
Yeah. So what's that been like, jumping into the whole musical production world?
It is like
it's fascinating,
going to
right?
school. It's an education.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn, but I can't wait till I'm probably 6 months out from getting totally creative again, instead of learning, you know, these manuals that are so in depth for all these different, you know, instruments.
What's it like working that muscle of your brain? Because you did the baseball thing for so long. The music thing was there, but you didn't really give it the time of day. So how cool is it to actually flex that muscle for, you know, the time being now?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's really wonderful to be creative. And I've always been a very kind of analytical math guy. So, you know, mixing with the production side, you know, learning the technical and the engineering, but then also be infusing the creative. You know, these are things I never operated in, you know, as a pitcher. It was just, you know, fastball, curveball, changeup.
Right. Pitch 6 innings, 7 innings, done. Okay, cool.
That's right, yeah.
On to the next start, right?
Yeah, and no bandwidth to do anything else beside that.
Definitely not. So thinking about your music, like the whole Nashville scene, it's like, here's my life. It may be broken. It may not have worked out, but like, I'm just going to spill it out here. Like, that's what you've done in your music too. So when did you realize like those two things connect, and what has it been like just putting that all out there in music?
Yeah, it's cool. Music is great because a lot of times the more vulnerable and authentic, the more you connect with a song or with an artist. And, you know, for me, I just wanted to tell these stories that were near and dear to my heart, that I felt like I lived. And so on that first EP that I did, I felt like I got to, you know, put music and lyrics together and, you know, with some co-writers on some of those songs and really just tell the story that I wanted to tell about what I'd been through. And, you know, it may be something that, you know, not everyone can relate to, but it is something that I feel like I told my story, and that just like, oh, okay, cool, I got that release.
Yeah.
You know?
When people read this story, what will be most surprising about the journey, or most surprising about you as a guy?
My goal with this book is just to humanize myself, but also people in the spotlight, or, you know, people that have, you know, extra commas in their paycheck. We tend to dehumanize these people and think that they can't have these very normal emotions. And also it's something I wish I read coming up, saying don't take it too seriously because you're going to get burnt.
Were there guys that were trying to tell you that along the way and you just couldn't hear it, or you didn't really have that?
You know, no one really kind of gave me that perspective. You know, I mean, maybe in a couple words, but nobody ever sat me down and said there's some bad things that could happen if you hold on too tight to this dream. Well,
it's good to see you back on the right track. Barry, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, man.
Check this guy's book out, Curveball, in bookstores now. For Barry, I'm DJ. See you next time here on The Sit Down.